I know you're proud of it. I know it was the job you were doing. You were taking out really bad guys. But do you feel like it took a little bit away from you as a human being? Would you ever want your son to experience that?
The war in the flesh overseas in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Africa is a cakewalk compared to the spiritual war.
Something that we started, something that we blew up. That's our responsibility.
Savage is too nice a word.
What do you say? Oh, he was having a rough day? It really comes down to this. How bad do you want it? Because that is what we think a man is.
They're setting you up for failure. They're sending you out on the battlefield with no weapon.
For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another UNAFRAID podcast. We're here for another chapter. What chapter are we on?
Kilo.
Kilo, you had to look. So Kilo, chapter Kilo, which I think that's Kill Addict, didn't it?
Kill Addict.
All right.
Worked out.
It worked out real well. The K with the Kill Addict.
So you're...
Before we go again, everything has been ran through DOD. We got approval on this book. So we are literally speaking on the book with a little bit of different twist and than the audio.
Yeah, just adding a little color.
We're having conversation. Yeah.
This is kind of the meat of your career, right? You're in the sort of constant
savage mode. Yeah.
Yeah, you're out there getting after it every night. It's the height of the war. It's the height of your career in terms of action. And you're loving it.
I am so loving it. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe a little too much in hindsight.
Well, depends who you're asking.
Right. A lot fewer bad guys on the planet.
True.
As a result.
Very true.
One of the things we talk about in this chapter is you're spending time on helicopters. You're in Afghanistan, right? Mountain terrain, big Chinooks, longer flights, and you got kind of time to think about your own mortality at this point, right? Mm-hmm. What's that like? What are the thoughts that are going through your head?
Yeah, the helicopter rides, because some of them could be up to an hour plus a little bit, and it gives you time to kind of think about a thing called life. The mistakes that you've made, and there were a lot. Certain things that you don't want to lose, and kind of the mortality. Of the actual job, like you literally stop, and because it goes so fast, this pipeline, the Spec Ops community, at least for me, it went so fast, and I don't ever remember really like taking a pause and thinking about the severity of everything that was going on, what I was witnessing, what I was partaking in, all the things, the kind of the culture I was put into. But a helicopter ride at nighttime, it kind of forces that, because it's just you and your thoughts, and those thoughts can be detrimental.
The way I kind of think about it, my only frame of reference would be you get some medical test that could have life-altering results, right? Mm-hmm. And as you're waiting, you get a skin cancer cutoff, and you're waiting for it to come back, and all of a sudden you have these deep thoughts about life and your kids and your regrets that we don't normally have because we're busy.
Yep.
Right. And you were super busy in this frame of mind. Sort of your first maybe brush with faith a little bit. Is that fair to say?
I think
think about things bigger than yourself.
I think so. Yeah. Because I think we said it before. Is like I would start, and maybe I said this at other times. Is I'd be like, hey, God, don't.
Please don't let me die.
Yeah, don't let me die tonight.
That's not really...
And it's not like diving into the word or a relationship,
There's no atheist in foxholes.
It's a good... And what's weird is, like, I've never been immersed in that. But the fact that my natural tendency was to do that, knowing that this could be my last night on this earth, that's where I went.
Right.
And there's obviously a good reason for that.
Yeah, yeah. And then big picture, you went there, darker parts of your life. A lot of Motley Crue getting played on the iPod shuffle.
A lot of Motley Crue.
Lifelong Motley Crue.
How could you not be?
What was, I know what I would listen to if I was going in. Mm-hmm. What did you have any favorites?
Feel Good was always a good one, for sure.
I'm thinking Kickstart My Heart.
That's another go. So those are like my two like go to.
Home Sweet Home on the way home.
And then
on the way out, right?
I didn't do a lot of Home Sweet Home. When I was back in my room and it was time to chill, but not really Home Sweet Home. Home Sweet Home, when I got home, like back in the States home, it sounded so sweet.
Oh, yeah.
But over there it was more like the Kickstart My Heart.
Livewire.
Yeah. Feel good kind of thing.
You talk a little bit about the differences, terrain, enemy, everything else between Iraq and Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through that.
Yeah, so Iraq is obviously flatter. I mean, it's pretty flat. I think the biggest elevation or the highest elevation in there, and don't quote me on this, is like 3,000. It's a desert. It's not big. And I remember that because we hit a target that was on an elevator. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, yeah, this is like one of the highest points in Iraq. But there's a few compounds on this like little plateau-y thing. But yeah, it's very flat. It's obviously hotter. And the enemy wasn't as savvy. They weren't as good as they were in Afghanistan. They weren't like hardened fighters until they were in later chapters. But usually Iraq was a little bit more of a cakewalk. It's more like, hey, we do all this stuff and we act like we're innocent at night. Where in Afghanistan, obviously the terrain's ridiculous. That's where, I mean, they've been fighting for centuries, never stopped. And they're like, hey, we're here to fight. And they want you to know
it's a warrior culture.
It is.
Yeah. It's terrain-wise, maybe, there again, not exactly what Iraq's Texas, Afghanistan's Colorado.
That's probably a good way to put it, yeah. Yeah, I think like Lone Survivor, I think was filmed in northern New Mexico, I believe, or something like that. Yeah, because the terrain was kind of similar. Yep. But it's not Kunar Province, jagged rock, eat you alive terrain.
So I think you go, if I recall, back and forth. This isn't like such a deployment-specific chapter. This is like several deployments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we kind of condensed a bunch of deployments in this one chapter.
Yeah, and you talked about, I think this is where you introduce using the thermos to take down the rooms. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so we'd use thermobaric grenades because it was just, again, I think we said this on the previous podcast, it's just the overpressure. So an explosion has shrapnel for obviously chewing up meat, but really what kills most people is an overpressure, like a big car size vehicle-borne IED that it goes off. Surely people are going to die from metal parts and pieces of like car, of course, but it's that overpressure that turns your inside to mush or just like takes you out. So that's what really gets you is the overpressure. Like if you look at like the atom bomb that we've seen, it's like that's all pressure. That's all pressure. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's you learn about that, and we used it because we couldn't get close to doors. Because they would be booby-trapping doors with grenades or putting improvised explosive devices by the doors or inside the house, or they would clack themselves off when they saw it was us. Okay. So we would throw a grenade, close to the door, and if it got near the door, it would explode and the pressure would pop open the doors.
Okay. So you were using the grenade almost like a breaching tool.
100%. That's what we were doing.
And also, in some of the cases, collapsing walls and things, right?
Yep. Yeah. And we learned what structures could handle it, what structures could not handle it, which we use that to our advantage.
So there's a scene in this book, and you've described it to me before. Matter of fact, when we were writing the book, this is one of my favorite. We're sitting right there. And you talked about going into a room, and there were 3 guys that you engaged within like 5 seconds. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah, it was more like 20, 30 seconds. But it was a quick boom, and then there's another guy behind a wall hiding, boom, and then there was another dude behind a couch, boom. And it was like, I'm good if I got one dude.
Right.
But when you get multiple, it's like, oh, dude, this is like
those jackpot.
Are the movies that made you and these guys we were chasing, they were actively running from us after they did stuff. And that's where we had to probably take down. Using those concussion grenades, I think we took down probably 3 or 4 rooms, like collapsed them, and then had to switch to frag grenade. So we're bringing in the fragmentation because we got to concrete. So obviously the overpressure wasn't going to do what we wanted. We were actually trying to collapse these rooms. Okay. So we would just collapse a room, and the adjacent room would still be up. We'd throw another grenade, it'd collapse it, and we did that for probably 3 or 4 rooms.
Till you hit concrete.
Till we hit concrete. Then it was a concrete structure.
So around this time, you also get Award of the Purple Heart.
Which is, you know, it's kind of funny, dude, is that piece of metal, it just came out 1 month ago.
Wow.
1 month ago. So like I went in there, totally diverting here. I went in and I'm actually I was going to do a podcast on this, but we'll just knock it out now. Is that that metal was there and it started moving in my face. Like you can still see the scar.
Yeah.
It was moving around and it was kind of going towards my eyeball. I was like, I need to go get this checked out before it, takes out my eyes or anything. So I went, so we cut it open and he was trying to find it. And there was just a little piece, like a very small, it almost looked like a piece of ceramic. So he like showed me, I was like, wow, I thought there'd be a little bit more than that because when I got hit with it, it was like getting bam, nailed. I mean, I got jacked. And so I was like, okay, well, thanks. And you could tell he was like, that's all you have, Navy SEAL guy? I'm like, yeah, I'm pathetic. So I come back to Amanda and everything was going, no, I threw it away. And then it was probably a couple weeks. It started to heal a little bit. And then still there was something there. And I noticed like a little black spot. I was like, am I getting like a blackhead from it or something? So I like tried to like pop it and nothing was going on. Then I kind of like took a pair of tweezers. I was like scraping it. It was like metal. It was like zzz, like grinding as I took it. So I was like, what the heck? So I kind of started messing with it. And I was like, man, screw this. Like after a couple of days, I'm like, I'm popping this thing. So I popped it and out came this huge piece of metal. It was like, it looked like a shark's tooth. It was this twisted metal and finally got everything out. It was finally done. I cleaned it out really good. And now it's like, there's no lump there, what there was there. And I like took it back to the dermatologist. Like, hey dude, this is it right here, bro. And he's like, how did we miss? I mean, it was so deep. I mean, it had to be like on the bone almost, that we had to get it. But yeah, I was coming up on a vehicle. The vehicle was on fire. There was an enemy combatant on the inside and he was moving. I don't know if he was getting out, moving. I mean, he was strapped with grenades. I found this out after grenades, AK-47. And I took a shot because he was moving on to take him out. And as soon as I shot one shot, the car exploded. And from that explosion, underneath my night vision, because the car was on fire, so it's still dark. Mm-hmm. So I'm going in between, like, using the fire so I can see, and then back down to my night vision to see what I can see. So I'm kind of doing this, and I took my shot off nods, so off night vision, looking underneath. And when I shot, that explosion went off. And it, boom, nailed me in my face. And I don't really know what the explosion was. I mean, it could have been from the car. He had or one of his, like, I don't know what it was, but I know that I got nailed in the face. And again, that's a very superficial wound for some of the guys that have like lost limbs and stuff like that.
That's what's interesting. It's the same award if dead, right?
So,
But you did save the taxpayers whatever the cost of the nods, had that metal hit the nods, you kind of took one for the team there.
100%.
Right?
It was all for everyone
20
else.
20 grand. Like, how big of a deal was it at the time? Did it take you out of the fight? Is it
not a big deal? I think the biggest deal was when I was overseas. So this was I think the first or second deployment or whatever, but it was a few weeks and we finally were going to do a VTC. There was no like Zoom or anything. It was like a video teleconference that the command set up so our spouses and family could come into the command. Okay. They would set up a secure link from us over where we were. We would go and we would do our chat. You had like a 30-minute allotted time. Okay. Well, this happened the night before this Zoom call or this VTC. So I'm like, so this is awesome. So I'm like emailing like, hey guys, Daddy's cool. It's not a big deal. Cause my eye was swollen and like I had a huge cut and it was kind of gnarly looking. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing is like my kids seeing Daddy hurt. That was probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. I can imagine. We talked a little bit about in the last chapter, but this is when, I mean, the name of this chapter says it all, Kill Addict. Killing bad guys became your drug, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was everything. I mean, that's what all this training, that's what all this is for. It's not to go shake hands. Now, if that's the case in a certain situation, then rock on. But with the wars going on, it was to go take out bad guys. That's what we were there for. Like I said, 80% of all offensive operations, not offensive operations. And I loved it. I mean, I loved it. And it was going from, 2 shots in the body, 1 to the head to, all right, just 1 head. That's all I would just I would try to up the game each and every time, if possible, without putting my guys in danger or myself in danger. But yeah, I was like, okay, I'm tired of shooting people with this gun. Wonder if we can go to the next one.
Right. So tell me about the MP7. One of the first conversations you and I ever had was on, because that's for civilians.
I think you asked if I ever shot it.
Yeah. And you're like, actually, because there's a lot of mistakes surrounding that gun. It's not something that's available to civilians. Even, a lot of firearms that a civilian can own some form of it. Right.
Yeah.
MP7, there's nothing you can go in the store and buy. And I think, I'm not a video game guy, but apparently it's big in that world too.
It's a cool looking gun. It is, yeah, it's cool.
HK does look cool very well.
100%.
Tell me about your experience with
So I think
for the non-gun nut people, the MP7 is a personal defense weapon. It's a very small, basically submachine gun that's in a very, very small caliber.
4.6.
And got a very high rate of fire. And the purpose of it, initially it was designed for somebody like an air crew or somebody that would give them capability beyond a handgun, but it was small enough that they could carry it basically everywhere they went. And
it had an awesome silencer on it.
And so it was very some subsonic ammo.
Quite, too, yeah. Right? So it was very cool. And I'm not dissing on the H&K it was not 416, the MP7 whatsoever. It's an awesome platform, but at the time, I think the ammo, they were learning that the primer was kind of peeling off inside the chamber, and that primer was staying on the inside and causing some crazy jams, which is what happened to me. But also the shots. I mean, again, it's a 4.6. As I was trying to find, because we're always trying to find a way to not carry as much weight. When you're walking up a mountain for 4 or 5 hours a night, every night almost, it takes a toll on your body.
And as a breacher, you're carrying heavy
and then you got all your explosives, and everyone's carrying heavy things. But you're just trying to find a way to preserve your body, be more combat effective, because the dudes you're fighting, these guys are like goats, mountain goats. They can just take off up the hill because they're very mobile. That's one of their greatest assets, is they can move quickly throughout the mountainside. But doesn't that sound like kind of like a picturesque thing at the mountainside? Yeah. Like I'm picturing like a little something. That was perfect. So that's what we did. So I took it on an op, and I put rounds in the guy, and it was his belly, and I remember just taking him out and just like boom, boom, boom. And it looked like Mike Tyson's Punch Out, like where you just nailing him in the stomach, and like this guy's stomach's going back and forth. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then the guy still wasn't going, so I took a headshot and finally knocked him out. And I used it again on another op, and I did a single shot in the head through the eyeball actually, and the dude was still alive. And we're like before with the H&K 416, it was... That's done. It. There's no, I mean, that feel good, peace of mind with that 416 versus an MP7 was night and day. So I was right back to the 416. And again, that MP7 does have its place on the combat in combat or in the war zone, but for what I was doing, it was not there. Not the right tool. Not like if I'm in a vehicle or I need a backpack or a backpack gun or something like that, then absolutely, it's a very good platform. Yeah. And they fixed, I know, a lot of the issues that they did have.
Yeah, and if in that situation where that guy, basically there was a delay in his death under some circumstances, that
could be enough to clack off himself. Yeah,
so you can't have that.
100%.
You can't take that risk.
Right.
What do you think, and we'll get to where you are now, but just while we're on the subject, how does all that, I know you're proud of it, I know it was the job you were doing, you were taking out really bad guys, but do you feel like it took a little bit away from you as a human being long term? Like are there forgetting everything else, just that alone, killing bad guys, do you feel like there are negative effects on you?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't think so. I think the cumulative of losing my guys, being in gunfights over and over, explosions, twisted metal, blood, all those things, seeing the reactions of families when you bring back their husband or their brother or their father, and seeing those reactions, I think that's more of that has hurt me more, and I'm not trying to say this is about me whatsoever, but I don't think the killing was is the killing thing. I don't think was. Is there some? I'm sure.
Right.
I learned about life. I mean, when you take life, you're taking life. It's a big deal. But it was in my mind, we were ridding this earth. Like, I'm proud of that.
Yeah. I think during your interview with Mike Ritland, he talked about the narrowing of the emotional bandwidth. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm sure there's a callousness that comes from that.
Oh, 100%. Like you can see, like you can tell, like, I think it was like a couple years ago, I was at my gym and there was a fight that broke out. Mm-hmm. And you know, when everyone, like someone fights, you can kind of get that, like that tense, like what's going on, and everyone's losing their mind.
Right. And
I remember sitting, and which I used to be like, but I remember there'd be like assessing what's going on, like they're good to go. No one's picking up a plate to smash someone's face. Like it was just like normal disagreement, pushing, maybe a punch, but dudes are flipping out.
Right.
And you can see what's happening. Not like I don't remember what happened or whatever it is. I was like, okay. And the only reason I was like that or was able to be like that is just because of the stuff I've seen.
Right.
So yeah, that's why we talk about like scenario-based training. You need to do that fight. You need to get like shot with a paintball. You need to do certain things to get your heart rate up, then go shoot. So, I mean, there's a reason for it.
Yeah. Your body has been fed a lot of fight or flight hormones.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to take a lot to get you really scared.
I'm sure there's probably therapists watching right now, like, Eddie, yes, it affected you. And they're probably right. But
no,
I mean
in your mind.
Yeah, in my mind. And again, I know a lot about a little, so let's
right. And I know it's impossible to separate that from all the other stuff.
Yeah,
but I
it
just
is.
Figured it's worth it.
It all just comes together in a big ball of mush.
Me and 98% of the people watching this will never experience that, so we just don't know.
And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. And that leads me to my last question. Would you ever want your son to experience that?
Experience that? No. If it was his passion and that's where he felt that the Lord was taking him, yes, and I would support him 100%.
Right, but that's about supporting him.
100%. Yeah. I would not. I cannot be the father that says no. I want you to go this path, and I've seen that. It's like I want you to follow my footsteps. No, dude, he's an individual, and if that's what he wants to do, then that's what he wants to do. But if he wants to go be a professional racquetball player, guess what? I'm going to support him. I'm going to go try to play racquetball with him with about 1,000 braces on my knees and my hips. Yeah. So yeah, it's on him.
Just be a really good.
He's got to be his own person.
Yeah. Good deal. Well, anything else for that one?
I think we're good. Dude, I got kind of emotional in that one, like talking. I went back. We went back.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the point of this.
It is the point. So it was good. No, I think I'm good.
Good. Well, we appreciate you sharing that stuff. Those aren't questions that a lot of folks would maybe be comfortable with. I know you well enough to know that those are conversations we can have, and that's kind of what it's all about.
And I think there's a little bit more in the book, I believe.
Oh yeah. It's not like you didn't write a book about it.
That's true. Or you did. I always tell everyone, he recorded me, he wrote this, and
we goose.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's it for Kilo.
I know it is Kilo, Kill Addict.
Yeah. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.
See you guys.